The letter lay crumpled on the cold hardwood floor. Blood smudged across the top, like someone tried to wipe it away, but gave up halfway. The room was quiet except for the faint ticking of a broken clock, stuck at 2:17 a.m. Moonlight poured through the cracked blinds, casting thin shadows over the pale wallpaper and empty wine bottles. A phone vibrated endlessly in the next room. Sarah stood in the doorway, breathless, barefoot, her eyes wide and blank. Her nightgown clung to her damp skin. She didn't remember falling asleep, didn't remember waking up. Just the smell of iron, the sharp sting of cold, and the strange silence that followed. Somewhere in the distance, sirens howled, growing louder by the second. Sarah whispered to herself, trembling, "I don't know what happened. I didn't do this." The last person who saw Jake alive was her. But that memory was buried beneath a fog she couldn't penetrate. And now, she was staring at the beginning of something she couldn't undo. The coffee had gone cold in her hands. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, numb, her eyes fixed on nothing. Her shoulders were slumped, back hunched, as if her body had already surrendered to what was coming. Her fingers clutched the cup not out of comfort, but routine, like holding on to something real in a world rapidly unraveling. She hadn't called anyone. Not yet. The phone was still in the other room, ringing every few minutes, vibrating across the wood until it dropped to the floor. But she couldn't move. Not after what she saw. Not after the blood. Not after Jake. Her voice cracked in the silence as she muttered, "I didn't ask for any of this." The refrigerator clicked behind her. A faucet dripped. Somewhere upstairs, a door creaked. Sarah didn't flinch. She just blinked once, then stared again. Her world had paused, but everything around her kept moving. Jake's jacket still hung on the back of the kitchen chair. It smelled like his cologne, cheap, spicy, too strong, but it was his. She reached out and touched the sleeve with trembling fingers. It was still warm, or maybe that was just her imagination. He had worn it the night before. She remembered him laughing. Or was that someone else's voice? The memory was hazy, fragmented like a dream slipping away. Jake had argued with someone. She remembered shouting. A slammed door. Then, nothing. Her mind tried to fill the gaps, but the images didn't make sense. In the silence, Sarah whispered, "Jake, where did you go? And why did you leave me here?" The blood died. The voicemail. Her body went rigid as her hand slid away from the jacket. She stood slowly, every motion heavy, like gravity was stronger in this place now. Something terrible had happened here, and she was starting to remember. The bathroom mirror was cracked down the center. Sarah stood in front of it, staring at her reflection like it belonged to someone else. Her face was gaunt, skin pale, eyes rimmed with red. She barely recognized herself. Beneath her left eye was a faint bruise, yellow and green along the edge. She didn't remember falling, didn't remember being hit. Her fingers traced the crack in the mirror, the glass cool and sharp. Her reflection split across the break, making her look fractured, broken. Just like everything else. The water in the sink was still stained pink, the towel beside it damp and rust-colored. Blood again. So much blood. Sarah whispered, "What did I do?" Her lips quivered, but no tears came. Her mind screamed for clarity, but all it gave her were fragments. Hands, voices, a flash of light, a scream, then nothing. And now, here she was, staring at a version of herself she didn't trust. Sarah stepped into the hallway, the floorboards creaking beneath her. The air was thick, as if it hadn't moved all night. Every step forward felt like walking into a memory she didn't want to find. At the end of the hall, Jake's bedroom door was cracked open, just an inch. Light from the window inside spilled into the hallway in a long golden stripe. She hesitated. Her breath caught. She knew something waited behind that door, something she didn't want to see again. But she walked anyway, each step slower than the last. Her hand reached out, fingers barely brushing the edge of the door. She pushed it open. The room was empty. Bed, unmade. The sheets soaked in blood. No body. Just the smell of iron and dust. Sarah took a single step inside, knees buckling slightly. Her voice caught in her throat as she whispered, "Jake." But no one answered. Sarah sat alone in the precinct interview room, its sterile white walls pressing in on her like a cage. The table was scratched, the chair stiff and unforgiving. Her hands rested palms down, still faintly shaking. Across from her, Detective Morgan leaned back, expression unreadable, a notepad resting between his fingers. He asked the same questions in different ways. What time did she last see Jake? What did they talk about? Did they fight? Her answers didn't change. No. I don't remember. He was just here. That's all I know. But doubt flickered in his eyes every time. Sarah could feel it. The world outside the door buzzed with voices, footsteps, the distant sound of someone sobbing. Her own voice sounded hollow in her ears, detached, like she was reading lines from a script someone else wrote. Detective Morgan sighed and said, "You were the last one to see him, Sarah. That matters." She looked up, and her eyes were empty when she said, "I wish I hadn't." Back at home, Sarah moved through her apartment like a ghost. Every sound startled her. The groan of the refrigerator, the wind against the window panes, her own breathing. She caught glimpses of herself in mirrors and flinched. Everything felt unfamiliar, like the space had rearranged itself overnight. The walls, the light, the silence, they all watched her. On the coffee table lay her unopened mail, a birthday card from her mother, and a lottery ticket Jake had given her as a joke. She stared at it, remembering his laugh as he handed it to her. She picked it up, her hands trembling again, scratched the surface slowly. One number matched. Then another. And another. Her chest tightened as she read the final result. She had won. Millions. But the joy never came. She just sat there, holding the ticket like a live wire, as if it might burn her. Sarah whispered, "You said it would change everything. You were right." That night, Sarah dreamt of water. Dark, still water. Jake stood waist deep, facing away, calling her name with a voice that echoed across the surface. She couldn't reach him. Couldn't move. His voice kept repeating her name, softer and more distant each time. Then suddenly, silence. In the dream, she screamed. When she woke, her throat was raw. The room was too quiet. The air too dry. She sat up slowly, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. Shadows from tree branches outside crawled across her ceiling like fingers. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed and sat there staring into nothing. For a moment, she thought she heard footsteps in the hallway. But when she looked, there was no one. The lottery ticket still lay beside her, folded neatly. But Sarah didn't feel lucky. She felt like she was being watched, haunted, and maybe, deep down, she knew she was. Morning came with a knock at the door. Sarah opened it to find Emily, her closest friend, standing there with puffy eyes and a look of concern that barely masked suspicion. Emily stepped inside without waiting. "I had to see you. People are talking." Sarah tried to smile but couldn't hold it. Emily sat on the edge of the couch, hands in her lap. They talked, or tried to, but the words came slow and awkward. Everyone at the cafe was whispering. About Jake. About Sarah. Died. About the money. Emily said, "I didn't want to believe it, but you look different." Sarah didn't reply. She just stared at her friend like she was already slipping away too. Then Emily saw the lottery ticket and went silent. Her eyes flicked to Sarah's, and something changed. Sarah saw it. The doubt. The distance. Even Emily didn't trust her now. The silence stretched long between them. Something had broken. After Emily left, Sarah stood at the window, watching people pass below. She felt like she was outside herself, watching her own life unravel. The city looked the same, cars moving, people talking, laughter in the air. But it felt hollow. She reached for her phone and opened her messages. Jake's last text sat there, unopened. "You'll understand soon." Her fingers hovered over it, then pulled away. The words felt like a warning. She stared out at the skyline, the noise of the world muffled by the glass. Then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed something. A man across the street, watching her window. Still. Unmoving. He didn't wave, didn't blink. Just stood there, face hidden beneath a hoodie, hands in his pockets. When she blinked, he was gone. But the fear didn't leave. Sarah backed away from the glass and whispered, "I think I'm being followed." Sarah spent the morning retracing her steps from the night Jake vanished. Every corner of the neighborhood felt different now, familiar, yet distant. The streets were quieter than she remembered. At the cafe, the barista gave her a strained smile and avoided eye contact. The corner store clerk, who once joked with Jake, barely nodded. Everyone knew something, or thought they did. As she walked past the alley behind the bar where she and Jake argued, the memories hit hard. She saw flashes, Jake's angry face, a bottle breaking, her own voice raised. But then, nothing. Just static. She leaned against the brick wall, breathing fast. A dog barked in the distance. Tires screeched. Everything felt too loud. Sarah whispered, "I was here. I know I was here." But what happened? The lottery win had changed how everyone looked at her, but the truth, that blank space in her mind, was more terrifying than their stares. In her apartment, Sarah spread out everything she had from that night. Jake's lighter, his worn hoodie, the bar receipt, the lottery ticket. She needed to make sense of it, to force the memories back. The receipt had a timestamp, 10:47 p.m. 2 drinks. One name scribbled on the bottom, Liam. That name meant something. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through old messages. There it was, Jake and Liam, texting back and forth about finishing things tonight. Her hands trembled. Who was Liam? She didn't remember him being there. She didn't remember anything after Jake stormed off. She pressed play on a voicemail from Jake she'd ignored for days. His voice was shaky. "If anything happens, it's not on you, Sarah. Please remember that." Then static. Then silence. She dropped the phone. Her heart pounded. She said his name again, softly, "Jake." "What did you do?" That evening, Sarah visited Jake's old apartment. The landlord gave her 10 minutes. The place was untouched. Dishes in the sink, laundry on the floor, a framed photo of them as kids on the bookshelf. Her fingers hovered over the frame, then gripped it tight. She wandered the space like a stranger, scanning every surface, every drawer. In the bedroom, she found a torn envelope with her name on it, but it was empty. A photo lay beneath it, Jake standing with a man she didn't recognize. Same bar. One. Same night. Milo was paid. The man was tall, dark hair, hand on Jake's shoulder. Jake looked tense. Sarah stared at it, until her vision blurred. Her voice shook as she whispered, "You weren't alone that night." She turned the photo over. One word was scrawled in Jake's handwriting, "Watch." Her blood ran cold. This wasn't about the money. This was something else. Something worse. Sarah brought the photo to the police, but they barely glanced at it. No crime had been confirmed. No body. No evidence. They called Jake a troubled man who might have disappeared by choice. But Sarah knew better. He was hiding something. She left the station with anger boiling in her chest. Outside, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're getting too close." Her breath hitched. She looked around. No one nearby. She rushed to her car, locked the doors, and drove. Her mind raced. Who was watching? What did they want? Her grip tightened on the wheel as she replayed the text over and over. Was Liam the man in the photo? Why did Jake write "watch"? She whispered to herself, over the hum of the tires. What am I missing? The road blurred ahead. But her purpose was finally sharpening. Someone wanted her scared. That meant she was finally asking the right questions. Back home, Sarah locked every door, pulled the blinds shut, and sat in the center of her living room, with the lights off. Her heart beat so loud she thought it might shake the floor. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. He told you not to remember. You should visit. She dropped the phone. Panic swelled in her throat. Who was sending these? What did they know? Her fingers hovered over Jake's voicemail again, then pressed play. His voice came through softer this time, like a final breath. Don't trust Liam. He's not who he says he is. Keep the money hidden. Tell no one. Sarah froze. Liam. Scholl. The name scratched on the receipt. The man in the photo. She knew now, Jake hadn't vanished. He had been hunted. And now, so was she. In the darkness she whispered, I shouldn't have scratched that ticket. And outside, down on the street, a black car idled in the shadows. Sarah stared at her laptop screen. The photo of Jake and the unknown man zoomed in to its grainy limit. She ran the image through an online reverse search, desperate for anything. Finally, a hit. A blurry security camera still from 6 months ago. Same man. Same face. The article was short. A robbery suspect. Unnamed. Armed. Connected to 2 other disappearances. Sarah leaned back, blood rushing in her ears. Jake had been mixed up with someone dangerous. And now, so was she. She opened a drawer, pulled out the lottery ticket, and folded it carefully inside an envelope marked for emergency. As she sealed it shut, her phone buzzed again. A voicemail from a blocked number. She hesitated, then played it. The voice wasn't Jake's. It was low, calm, and unfamiliar. It said you're too late. He made his choice. Now you have to make yours. The message ended with silence. No breathing. Just silence. Sarah drove to the outskirts of town, clutching the envelope tight in her coat pocket. She needed to think, to breathe. She parked near the abandoned industrial yard where Jake used to skateboard as a kid. The place was desolate now. Rusted fences, shattered glass, old graffiti faded by time. She sat on the hood of her car, wind howling around her. In the distance, a crow landed on a street lamp and watched her. She pulled out the photo again, traced Jake's face with her thumb. He was scared. She hadn't seen it before, but it was there. She whispered, "Why didn't you come to me? Why did you go to him?" She looked at the envelope in her lap. That ticket had cursed everything. Behind her, gravel shifted. A shadow moved. Sarah turned, breath held, but nothing was there. Still, her instinct screamed. She wasn't alone out here. Not anymore. Back at home, Sarah studied the voicemail again. The voice. The phrasing. She slowed the audio, analyzed the background hum, isolated the static. Then she heard it. Faintly, music. A piano. Old, haunting. A melody she recognized. Jake's favorite dive bar played it every Friday night. She stood up fast, grabbing her coat and the envelope. She didn't think. She moved. The bar was dim and nearly empty. A few drunks hunched over their glasses. The piano played from a dusty jukebox in the corner. Sarah stepped inside, scanning every face. Then she saw him, same man from the photo, sitting in the far booth, watching her calmly, as if he knew she'd come. Her breath caught. She stepped forward, voice shaking. "Who are you?" The man smiled slightly and said, "Ask Jake. You'll get your answer." Then he stood and walked out the back door without another word. Sarah followed. Sarah burst through the back door into a narrow alley, cold air slapping her face. The man was already halfway down the alley, moving fast but not running. She shouted, "Hey! Stop!" He didn't. She ran, boots slamming the pavement, heartbeat thundering. He turned a corner. She followed, breath ragged. But when she turned the same corner, he was gone. Nothing. No doors. No exits. Just brick walls and silence. She stood there, gasping, spinning in place. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Jake's number. Stop chasing ghosts. Her hand trembled. She dropped the phone. This wasn't paranoia. It was a warning. She picked up the phone slowly and looked around. No cameras. No lights. Just shadows that felt alive. She whispered, "You're still out there, aren't you? Jake, what the hell did you get into?" Her breath curled in the air like smoke. She knew the next step would be darker. At 3:17 a.m., Sarah returned home and finally unlocked the drawer Jake once told her never to open. Inside, buried beneath old receipts and broken headphones, was a burner phone, one she didn't know existed. She powered it on. 3 voicemails. All from Jake. The first was rushed. He sounded out of breath. "I did what I had to do. For you." The second was more desperate. "Don't trust anyone, Sarah. Liam isn't just some dealer. He's part of something bigger. I thought I could handle it. I was wrong." The last voicemail was calm, eerily calm. "If you're hearing this, I'm probably gone. They'll come for you now. Don't let them find the ticket. Don't let them find you." Her hand clenched around the phone. Every lie, every silence, every friend who had stepped away, it all made sense now. Sarah whispered through clenched teeth, "You didn't vanish. You were erased." Sarah drove through the rain, windshield wipers scraping against the glass in frantic rhythm. Her knuckles were white against the steering wheel, eyes locked on the road ahead. She was done hiding. She had listened to Jake's final voicemail a dozen times, piecing together the clues. Everything pointed to one location, an old motel on the outskirts of town, the kind that took cash and asked no questions. That's where Liam had taken him. That's where it all began. As she pulled into the gravel lot, the place looked abandoned. Faded neon flickered. One room light glowed yellow through a grimy curtain. She stepped out, rain soaking through her coat, and approached the door. Her pulse thundered. Her voice low, she said, "I'm not running anymore." She knocked. Silence. Then the door creaked open just an inch. A shadow moved behind it, and someone said her name. Inside the motel room, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and secrets. Liam stood across from her, taller than she remembered from the photo, eyes sharp and unreadable. He motioned for her to sit. She didn't. The silence between them was a war zone. Then he spoke. Jake came to me. He wanted out. But he owed people, and people like that don't just forget. Sarah's fists clenched. "You used him." Liam shrugged. "And he made a deal. I kept my word. You won the lottery. He wanted you safe. That money wasn't luck. It was insurance." Her mind reeled. Jake had given her the ticket, risked everything, for her? She stepped forward. "What did he give you in return?" Liam didn't answer. He just stared, a faint smile twitching at the corner of his mouth. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "Did you kill him?" Liam leaned in and said, "I didn't have to." Sarah turned to leave, heart pounding. Liam didn't stop her. But as she opened the door, he said one more thing. "If you go to the police, they'll never find you." She paused, breath catching in her throat, then stepped out into the rain. She got in the car, soaked and shaking, and drove with no destination. Her thoughts spiraled. Jake had tried to shield her, to bury the danger inside that ticket, but it had found her anyway. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time, no message. Just a live feed. Her front door. Someone was there, standing still. Waiting. Sarah's hands trembled on the wheel. She whispered, "Oh God, it's not over. Not even close." She floored the gas. She wasn't going to die running. She was going to fight. Jake had sacrificed himself. Now it was her turn to finish what he started. She reached her apartment just after 3 a.m. The street was deserted. The figure from the camera was gone. But she knew someone had been here. The elevator was broken, so she climbed the stairs, each step echoing like a countdown. At her door, she paused. No sounds. No lights. Just darkness. She unlocked it and stepped inside, fists clenched. The living room looked untouched, until she noticed it. The envelope. It had been moved. Opened. The lottery ticket was gone. Her heart sank. She ran to the kitchen, threw open drawers, checked the safe. Empty. What? She gripped the counter, her breath ragged. They had been here. She was too late. From the hallway came the sound of a creaking floorboard. Her eyes widened. She wasn't alone. She turned just as a figure lunged from the shadows. She screamed. Fight began. The struggle was brutal, glass shattering, fists flying, bodies slamming into walls. Sarah fought like someone with nothing left to lose. She kicked, screamed, grabbed anything she could, books, lamps, her elbows smashing into the attacker's ribs. He grunted, masked face twisting in pain. She ripped at the mask. For a second, she saw him. It wasn't Liam. It was someone else. Younger, dying, colder. Tired. Her body burned, lungs gasping for air. But she didn't stop. With one final push, she threw him against the window, and he crashed through the glass, falling 2 stories into the alley below. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called. She dropped to the floor, bleeding, shaking but alive. The ticket was gone. Jake was gone. But Sarah had survived. She lay there whispering, "I'm still here. And whoever sent him, they'll know that now." Sarah sat under fluorescent lights in the hospital hallway, stitches on her forehead, her arm in a sling. A patrol officer stood nearby, silent, arms crossed. Her statement had been taken. Again. But this time, things were different. There was blood. There was a body. There was evidence. For the first time they believed her. But the ticket was still missing. The attacker had no ID, no phone. Nothing to trace. She kept replaying the fight in her head. Not just the fear, but the fury. How she'd refused to die. A nurse passed by, offered a weak smile. Sarah didn't return it. Her reflection in the hallway window was pale and sharp, like someone she didn't know. She whispered, "Jake, I survived. But is that what you wanted? Was this your plan?" Her grip tightened on the blanket wrapped around her. The war wasn't over. But she was no longer afraid to fight. Later that day, Sarah returned to Jake's grave for the first time since the funeral, if it could even be called that. There was no body, just a stone, just a date, just questions. She knelt in the wet grass, fingers tracing his name etched in cold granite. She spoke softly. "I don't know what you got into. I don't know what the ticket really meant. But I know you gave it to me for a reason." She pulled the envelope from her coat, empty now, and laid it on the grave. "I'll find out who they are, what you were running from, what you were trying to fix. I promise." Rain began to fall, but she didn't move. It mixed with the dirt and blood still dried beneath her nails. She was tired, but there was fire in her chest now. No more hiding. No more ghosts. If they wanted a war, they would get one. That night, Sarah broke into Jake's old storage unit. It was tucked behind an auto shop, long forgotten. The lock was rusted, easy to snap open. Inside, dust and darkness greeted her. She clicked on a flashlight and swept it across boxes labeled with Jake's handwriting. Old notebooks, a duffel bag, a locked tin case. She forced it open. Inside, photos, printed emails, bank transfers, code names. Every detail Jake had hidden about Liam and the network behind him. Sarah flipped through them with shaking hands. He'd been collecting evidence, preparing something, Maybe for the police. Maybe for her. She whispered, "You were trying to end it." Alone. She tucked the case under her arm and backed out into the night, locking the unit behind her. She had just inherited a war file. And she didn't plan on losing. They had erased Jake. But she was going to make them remember him. Sarah met Detective Morgan at dawn. She handed him the tin case without a word. His eyes widened as he flipped through the files. Names. Locations. Payments. It was real. And Jake had been in over his head. Sarah said softly, "He didn't run. He was hunted." Morgan nodded. "This isn't just drugs. This is organized, targeted, protected." He promised to take it upstairs. But Sarah had no illusions. This was bigger than him. Bigger than the badge. As she turned to leave, he called out, "You're still not safe, you know." She stopped, looked him in the eye. "I was never safe. But I'm not alone anymore." She walked out into the early morning light. The street still quiet, golden haze rising from the pavement. The world looked the same. But inside her, something had shifted. She wasn't a witness anymore. She was a threat. Later that morning, Sarah stood on the roof of her building. The sun was climbing now, slicing through haze and high clouds. She stared out over the city, arms crossed, wind tugging at her coat. Somewhere out there, the people who had taken Jake still moved freely. Still watching. Still hunting. But now, they knew she was alive. That she had the files. That she wouldn't stop. Her phone buzzed. A message from a number she didn't know. Just one word, "Soon." She read it, nodded once, and deleted it. Let them come. She wasn't scared. She would be ready. For Jake. For herself. For the truth. As the wind roared across the rooftop, she stood tall, framed by the rising sun. No longer a woman in mourning. No longer a name in a case file. Sarah was the end they didn't see coming. Sarah waited in the library basement, surrounded by dim lights and dust-covered shelves. This was the drop. Morgan had arranged it, an off-the-record meeting with an anonymous federal contact. If what Jake uncovered was accurate, this went deeper than local cops could handle. The metal case sat on the table beside her, sealed and silent. Every footstep in the hallway made her pulse spike. Finally, a woman in a gray coat entered. No name, no greeting, just purpose. She opened the file, scanned the contents, and said quietly, "This confirms everything. But if you go public, you won't survive the week." Sarah met her eyes. "I'm not the only one who has a copy." The woman paused, then nodded. "You just made yourself a target." Sarah replied flatly, "I've been one." The woman left without another word. Sarah leaned back in the chair, breathing deep. Jake had tried to warn her. And now the war had officially begun. That night, Sarah walked through the city with a calm she hadn't felt in weeks. Not peace, something else. Focus. Her movements were measured, her gaze steady. The file was gone now, handed off to people who would either protect it or bury it. But she had copies. She had names. Jake had left a breadcrumb trail, and now she had picked it up. She passed people laughing at sidewalk cafes, taxis honking, lights flickering across rain-slick pavement. Bar needs to spy. Normalcy was a costume. Everyone wore it, pretending not to see the things underneath. She whispered to herself, "I see it now. All of it. And I'm not afraid anymore." Her reflection stared back from a storefront window. Same face. Different eyes. She wasn't broken. She wasn't a victim. She had become the truth they feared most. She kept walking. The night had changed, and so had she. Sarah returned home to find her apartment exactly as she left it, too quiet. She walked to the window and looked out, half expecting to see a figure in the shadows. But no one was there. Not this time. The room still held the scars of the fight. Glass embedded in the floor. Bloodstains hidden beneath a rug. But the silence didn't haunt her anymore. It empowered her. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and began typing. Names. Locations. The truth. She wasn't going to vanish like Jake. She would shine light on the shadows. And if that meant putting a target on her back, so be it. A single tear fell down her cheek, not from grief, but clarity. She whispered, "I'm still here. And this time, I'm loud." Somewhere, deep in the city's core, someone read her message and leaned back in their chair. Game on. Detective Morgan stood at the crime board in his precinct, pinning up a final photo. Sarah, walking away from the courthouse steps. Not under arrest. Not as a suspect. Just walking. For the first time, he truly believed she hadn't been running. She'd been surviving. And now, she was fighting. Around the board were the faces of everyone Jake had tied to the network, some dead, some missing. And Sarah, now at the center. A red string linked her photo to them all. Morgan muttered to himself she didn't run from the fire. She walked through it. Behind him, a junior officer asked, "Should we bring her in?" Morgan shook his head. "No. She's not the problem anymore. She's the only reason we have a case." He stared at her photo a second longer. Sarah wasn't a suspect now. She was the only one, still standing. The ocean stretched out before her, infinite and calm. Sarah stood at the cliff's edge where Jake used to take her when they were kids. Waves crashed below in rhythmic thunder, but the sky was clear. She held a new letter in her hand, written by her, addressed to no one. A confession. A record. A goodbye. She folded it, placed it beneath a smooth stone, and stepped back. "I carried your secret, Jake, but I won't carry your silence." She sat down, legs crossed, eyes locked on the horizon. The wind tangled her hair, but she didn't mind. The past had bled enough. Now came the after. A quiet peace, sharp and full of weight. She whispered, "The hardest part of surviving isn't the fear. It's living with the truth." She stood again, taller than before. The sun broke through the clouds. For the first time in a long time, Sarah smiled.